Hi, this is Mr. B. I wanted to create a very short video on writing the absolute value equation between, or to find the distance between 2 points. The points could be on a number line like we see it right here, or it could be on a coordinate grid, which we'll take a look at in just a few minutes. So in this problem right here, it's asking us the distance between the 2 points. And what we want to do, and I know the answer is very obvious and it's pretty simple, but what we want to do is create an equation that will solve this. Now I know we can look at this and say, oh, this is easy, it's 7, right? Because there's 3 from -3 to 0, that's the first big jump, that's 3, and then there's 4 from 0 to +4. So the answer is pretty obvious. But how do we create the equation? Because there will be other problems that are not so obvious. So in this case, we're looking at the distance from 0, which is the absolute value. So we're going to use absolute value in order to find distance. We're only looking at how far are these points from 0, and then we're going to use those numbers to find our distance. So -3 is 3 away, and +4 is 4 away from 0. The absolute value of -3 is 3, the absolute value of 4 is 4, and we would want to add those two together. So 3 plus 4, and there is our answer, is 7. That's our distance between those 2 points. And like I said, that's very simple to see that on this number line. However, we might have a problem that's a little more tricky, using numbers that are not so obvious. So here we have just decimal numbers. It's not very obvious what the answer is. So we can still use a math equation like this to find our distance. We're still looking at how far each of these points are from 0, which is absolute value. -3.17 is 3.17 away from 0, and then a positive 3.89 is 3.89 hundredths away from 0, and we would add those two together. We can see on this number line why would we add those together, because this section here, this jump and this jump are side by side, and we want the total jump or total distance for these. So we would add those two together, and what is that, 7.06, I believe. I think that's right. All right, so 7, whatever the yards or feet or whatever have you. So let me summarize here. So what we did was look at the absolute values, and we added them together. But we will not always add them together. So let's take a look at this example here. So here we have 2 points that are both negative numbers. So -9 is how far from 0? -9 is 9 away from 0. That is our absolute value of -9. I'm just writing the absolute value underneath it. And then -4 here, the absolute value, or the distance from 0, is 4. Well, in the last page, we added those together, but here we are not adding them together. Because if we take a look at 9 from here all the way to 0 is 9. And then the 4 from 4 all the way to 0 is 4. And I don't want this distance, I just want to know what this part is. So that is not an addition problem. They are not side by side. We need to subtract them. So 9 minus 4 in this case is 5. So 5 is the distance between -9 and -4. Of course, we would say, that's so easy, let's just count. But there will be some times when we have a more difficult problem, such as this. Now it's much harder to simply count. We would want to use these absolute values and say, all right, now the absolute value of -8.784 and the absolute value of -4.24, and we will subtract them. They're both both of these points are on the same side of the 0. So we will subtract these instead of adding them. Let's take a look at a coordinate plane. The same idea happens on a coordinate plane because a coordinate plane is simply two number lines. And so we can look at points A and B. Here are the points listed up here. So right now we're going to ignore point C. Let's not think of that. Let's just go from point A to point B. Well, this is just like a number line. And it's going from this number all the way over to this number. Look at the 2 points here. Look at their coordinates. And you'll notice that one of these coordinates, either the x or the y coordinate, remains the same while the other one changes. Here, the y coordinate stays the same. And if you look on our coordinate graph, it's easy to see why. Because it stays, as you move from A to B, you are staying on the exact same y coordinate, -2. All the way from here, no matter where you are on this line, you're on the same y coordinate. So we will not be using these coordinates. We don't care. They don't change. They're not going to be helpful in finding the distance. These are the two coordinates we want to use when we're finding the distance. And so we'll set up -3, and of course we're going to be using absolute values. So first thing I do, just put these two numbers down, get our absolute values, and then we'll have to think, are we adding them together or are we subtracting them? Well, we can easily see that these 2 points are on opposite sides of 0. One of them is negative and one of them is positive. Therefore, we will need to add them together. They're on opposite sides of 0. This from this point to 0 on our number line is 3 jumps, and then from 0 to 6 is 6 jumps. And notice these are side by side. These jumps are side by side next to each other. So we would add these two together. And one real simple way is just to see one of them is negative and one of them is positive. Add them together if they are different signs. So this is a 3, and the absolute value of 6 is 6 here. So we would get a 9 units in distance. Now we can take a look at our next problem. I just lost our point. I just wanted to get rid of the blue. I don't want to get rid of the point here. So let me put that point back here. All right, so let's find the distance from the point B to the point C. All right, I get all of this. How about we just bring all this blue stuff? I don't want to erase all the other good stuff. I just want that gone right there. Okay. Now let's take a look at these 2 points from B to C. Notice the direction we're going to be traveling. We're going to be traveling like north and south, right? Up and down, north, south. And so one of these coordinates remains the same and the one changes. So here we see the x coordinate remains the same because as you walk from point B to point C, the x number here is 6, and that doesn't change. You're still on the 6 as far as the x number line is concerned. All of the points along this line here has 6 as the x coordinate. So this number 6 is not going to help us find the distance. We don't want the same number. We want the two numbers that are different. So here we have -2 and -7. Those are the two numbers we're going to put in our absolute value symbols, -2 and -7. We need these two numbers here. So the question now is, do we add them together or do we subtract them? Well, we saw from our previous problems in here that when we have two negative numbers or two positive numbers and they're on the same side of 0, they're not side-by-side jumps like these. These are two jumps that are kind of, you see a total here, the total, and then you see a part, and we're trying to find this other part over here. So we are subtracting them. So what you can think is simply there are two negative numbers, or if they're two positive numbers, we want to subtract them. Now here, this is going to be kind of a strange problem because I'll end up with 2 minus 7. Well, that's okay. We can switch them around. Now normally, 2 minus 7 is not the same answer as 7 minus 2, but remember, we're just finding the distance between them. So we can just put whatever number we want, whatever the larger, greater number, greater absolute value first, like this, 7 minus 2, and then our answer is 5. So it's 5 units away. Because we're simply dealing in distance, we can switch the location of these two numbers and we will still get the correct distance away from them. So sometimes we will need to add absolute values when they're on opposite sides of 0. One is negative, one is positive. Always add. When they are on the same side of 0, either both of them are negative or both of them are positive, we would subtract those numbers. And that is, just in a nutshell, how to write the absolute value equations. Thank you.